Welcome to New Stripe City, podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie. So, I know you guys were probably expecting me to make an appearance Sunday. I was expecting to as well. But the way that my life is set up, things just happened. Things were out of control. Actually, was without a cell phone as well as a laptop this weekend. So, this is my new setup. I have a new laptop now. We're not going to get into everything, but basically I just had a technical mishap this past weekend. So new laptop now, new cell phone is being worked on. I had to actually send my cell phone off to Apple. I'm right now rocking with this horrible, and sorry for all the Android users out there, but this was like a cheap replacement phone. It's horrible. So basically that's where we're at with that. But I was able to catch the game, and unfortunately, it's not G's fault. It was my fault that I wasn't able to appear this weekend. So hopefully, we'll get back on track. But I do have some new things coming down the pipeline. But I'll get into a little bit of where we're going in a second. I don't want to waste too much time, but I actually have some changes coming up where I just received a new job offer that I accepted in Central Florida. So I will be moving, but I will do my best to make sure that I still come and meet up with G and film these during that transition down there. But definitely exciting times. We're definitely busy. So the first thing that I want to talk about is you'll notice in the background this great backdrop, and I have no one else to thank but one of my best fans and one of the best watchers of the show, Jeremiah. He definitely looked out. Man, this guy went above and beyond to send us this flag, which we truly appreciate, with all of these signatures that you see behind me. So there were a lot of guys on there like Jordan Willis, even Marvin Lewis, and a lot of other guys. Joe Mixon was another one. So definitely a big shout out to Jeremiah. I look forward to, if you want to, coming on the show and just sharing some of your observations from Bengals camp. This guy does a lot of stuff for the show that you guys might not notice. He goes above and beyond as being a fan, so he sends us video, pictures, and things of that nature. So definitely a huge shout out to him. And I mean, you can see the signatures behind me. Definitely dope and definitely grateful for that. But with that being said, let's talk about the preseason game, right? It was like the sky was falling after the game, and I kind of let it marinate a little bit. And I'm kind of glad that I was able to have a little bit of a delay to kind of give my full thoughts on it. And the thing is that most people kind of have a negative view about the game. I'm not saying that I'm Mr. Optimistic, but I wasn't really sure why people were freaking out as much as they were. So obviously the Bengals were blown out. But to me, I'm not going to say it was expected, but I wasn't really too surprised, right? So a lot of people are saying that it's a blowout, but when you really look at the grand scheme of things, when the starters were in, the game was 10-6, which isn't bad. I mean, honestly, we could have done better, but I mean, 10-6 really isn't bad. And when you kind of re-look at the game, it's almost, a lot of people are saying, well, we didn't put any points on the board, which is understandable. But you go back and you look at some of those drives, right? And A.J. Green had a drop on third down in which the guy could have scored a touchdown. It was a simple mistake by Andy where he threw it a little bit behind him. But you look at that, and that's possibly a touchdown. And, I mean, that ended the drive there and turned it into a field goal. To me, in my opinion, it didn't seem like the offense was truly struggling, like some people I've heard have said. And then you have to think about this too, is the fact that you've got Tyler Eifert that's back. You've got an offensive line that's trying to find itself still. You've got a lot of new guys on the line there. And then you also have to account for the fact that, this is the second game. I mean, they're still installing packages in the offense. Guys are still getting comfortable within the offense. So you can't really be mad that, they're not on point every single play. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's preseason. And at the end of the day, the Kansas City Chiefs, are a very good team. They're well balanced on both sides. So I wasn't really, in a sense, too worried about it. I'm not taking it lightly, but I wasn't really too worried because, like I said, it was a close game. And then a lot of people are concerned about the defense. And this is the thing. If you've ever played football before, you know that the defense kind of takes time for everyone to build up that chemistry. And so, with this being the second week, and then you have to account for the fact that there were a lot of people out. Like on defense, you had Pac-Man Jones out, you had Draco Patrick. Those are your two starting corners right there. Not to mention Shawn Williams gets an injury. That was one of the biggest negatives to me from this game. But you had a lot of guys that weren't even in it. So you have that going. And then you also have a D-line that's looking to gel, where you have new guys like Chris Smith, who did look good. That was another positive from the game. And then you have a Jordan Willis who also looked good, with guys that were trying to find their way. And in my opinion, you've also got some new starters in there, like a Nick Vigil and a Kevin Minter. These guys from day one aren't automatically just going to jump in there and be a top 5 defense, top 10 defense. I think they definitely have the potential to be, but from day one, they're not just going to have that chemistry. You can't really have that expectation. And then, like I said, this is the preseason. A lot of this stuff is vanilla defenses. A lot of this stuff is vanilla offenses. And we saw that last week in the practice leading up to this game, the Bengals were just installing their exotic blitzes. So that shows you about how far in the process they were. Now, another thing on the flip side of things, you have to look at it from a Kansas City point of view. Alex Smith, believe it or not, is in a quarterback battle with Pat Mahomes. So obviously Alex Smith is going to be playing, not saying that anyone on the Bengals wasn't playing at 100%, but he's going to be playing with a fire up under him, because he knows that at the moment that he messes up, that this could be the Colin Kaepernick situation all over again, where if he, doesn't live up to the expectations and the offense doesn't score in the preseason consistently, they're going to look at Mahomes. Mahomes is a guy that they drafted and that they actually traded up to actually take this guy. And that's another thing. A lot of people were like, well, we kind of, in a sense, once the backups got in, the lead kind of spread. Well, I kind of expected that, because Pat Mahomes could technically, in a sense, even though he's a rookie, be a starter. So you've got a starter level guy in there with your second team, and you have a mix of guys that are in their second and third years for the Bengals, just trying to get a grasp of things going on. And a lot of people also talk about the offense with the second team. When you really look at this game, when you really think about it, and to me, an alarm kind of went off on my head when Chris Brown became like a main receiver. That showed you from a standpoint with Cody Core being out, although that this is probably the deepest part of the team at wide receiver, when Cody Core is out and John Ross is out, our receiving core was kind of thin after those guys, right? So you even had Josh Malone even getting some snaps with the first team offense. So you basically were down to Josh Malone, Chris Brown, Alonzo Russell even got some meaningful snaps, but you didn't really have guys in there that could have made a difference like that. So if you would have had a Cody Core in there, I guarantee you the offense would have probably looked a lot more fluid. And you also have to look at the fact that not only were those guys out, there were a lot of guys out, period. Just looking at it from an overall standpoint, whether it's, like I said earlier, Adam Jones, Drake Patrick, to some of the other guys like Carl Lawson, who didn't even play. We had a lot of guys that just didn't play in this game. So it wasn't really surprising to me that Pat Mahomes did as well as he did. He's a great quarterback. And then you also had Kareem Hunt, who's also a guy who could challenge to be a starter for the Chiefs. So you got two guys that have potential, even though they're rookies, to be starters, and they're playing on the second team. So, there's a little bit of, I guess, in a sense, a difference in the talent. And then, like, the third team got in, and Chandrick West was on the third team just ripping up the defense. But this is my thing. Chandrick West at one point for the Chiefs was a starter. He's in there against guys that more than likely aren't going to make the team, and more than likely, are going to be in street clothes in a couple of weeks, right? So why wouldn't he look good against our third team guys? That's another thing. But between injuries and everything, I wasn't really too concerned. Some of the positives that I took out of this game, since everyone wants to really focus on the negatives, would be, number one, Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd has been the leader, I believe, in receptions throughout the preseason. Number two, I would say Chris Smith. Chris Smith actually got some snaps with the first team. There was a play where I believe Alex Smith dumped off a screen pass to Kareem Hunt, and Like literally, like if he would have dumped it off a second later, Chris Smith would have had the guy for the sack. And he came through from the left tackle from the blind side, and he actually still ended up tackling Alex Smith, but he just dumped it off already. Chris Smith is the real deal. I think that's known. I think he'll get more time going into next week, but I think that Chris Smith is definitely a guy that's going to be a hard guy to keep off of this roster. I honestly think that he could potentially start over Michael Johnson if they do choose to keep Michael Johnson, but that's the number one positive right there. Number two, I would say Jordan Willis. Jordan Willis, I would say, is another guy who can take this pass rush to the next level. You're talking about a guy out of Kansas State that we drafted that just is a natural pass rusher. I would say he would be the second positive for me. If I'm looking outside of that, you can also say Alex Erickson. Alex Erickson has some nice returns. He has some nice catches. He's proven that we're going to have to keep 7 wide receivers on this roster. Other than that, some other positives in other areas I would probably say would be some of that safety depth. And, you know, a negative was that Shawn Williams was hurt. And in my opinion, just to get into the Shawn Williams thing, I'm not sure that it's a huge loss versus, say, a George Iloka to be hurt, a Pac-Man Jones to be hurt, or, you know, another starter. He kind of had his little hiccups here and there last year. And to me, you have a solid room in a sense behind him because you have a guy in Josh Shaw who can definitely play corner and safety. And, you know, the Bengals have given him snaps there. He could easily be a guy that could fit into that situation. You also have a Darrin Smith who's more of a ball hawk. And that's the thing. A lot of people talked about Darrin Smith. The play that he was in where the tight end caught the touchdown, he couldn't have been in any better coverage. That was just a great play by that tight end. It was a backup tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he was there. It wasn't like there was a play where the tight end was wide open. So Darrin Smith is a guy that has shown that he could be a ball hawk, could be good in coverage. And then also you have Clayton, I'm not even going to try to say his last name, who's pretty physical himself. So I don't think that we're really going to have too much of an issue there. Other than that, let's see. The offensive line, Trey Hopkins. It's pretty obvious that Trey Hopkins is going to be the right guard. I've been telling you guys about Trey Hopkins for a while. I actually did the scout breakdown going back into last year. I'm not really going to say much about him, but it's obvious that Trey Hopkins is really going to be our right guard. The offensive line, to me, did not really look too bad. The offensive line, honestly, did pretty well for what the expectations are for them, especially against a team that has a Justin Houston and a Tamba Ali and a Tano passing. These guys have pass rushers. So for what they did, of course, there were some miscues here and there, but they held up pretty well. I mean, especially being that you went from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week to the Kansas City Chiefs this week. And I feel like the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, have one of the best defensive lines in the league. So no surprise there. I would say another thing is that a lot of people are talking about the offense and everything, mainly the tight end position, with Croft not really making an impact. Mason Schreck actually took this opportunity to make an impact. And another positive will be the kickers. We're having this kicker competition with Jake Elliott and with Randy Bullock. And, you know, both guys are out there making field goals. Even though it was more so a field goal fest, they were still out there making their field goals, doing what they needed to do. So that's what we like to see, especially coming off of a year where Mike Nugent really struggled. I say that would be another positive. And to me, it just seems like some of these struggles were kind of overblown. And I'm not just saying that, but, I mean, come on, man. It's the second preseason game. You know, everybody's talking about the offense hasn't scored their first touchdown. In my opinion, I don't think Zampese really is trying to show that much. And why would you really want to show your hand too much, especially with your first game being a divisional game? There's going to be a lot more, you know, hidden packages and things of that nature that will be used come to regular season. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Like, obviously, it did come out pretty flat, but I don't think it's a reason to think that there's going to be any kind of long-term effect on this team. So moving on, the biggest thing to look out for is that I would expect John Ross to come back this week. I expect him to play. And that's going to add a dynamic. Cody Core is expected to play. Lawson is expected to play. There's a lot of guys who probably didn't play this last game that will be expected to play this game. And so you need to keep your eyes on this game as far as setting that bar for how good the Bengals players actually are and how good this team is, because we're going to see Chris Smith get more snaps with the ones. We'll probably see Jordan Lewis mixed in with the ones. I would expect to see Williams Jackson III, who also had another good game last game. That kind of flew under the radar with everything that went on. But I would expect to see guys like that step up. Andrew Billings, I think, had a little bit of some growing pains, but you're talking about a guy who, is basically essentially a rookie now, playing in his second NFL game. There's going to be growing pains with any person that you put into that predicament. So we'll see what Billings does. I'm pretty confident he can bounce back. There were a lot of missed tackles. And to me, I don't know if people have been paying attention, but I believe there was a report that came out of camp that this is the first year where Marvin Lewis really isn't having guys tackle each other in practice. And I think that this is a direct result of that. So hopefully they can get that claimed up. That's definitely not going to be acceptable during the regular season, but I think that was a product of that as well. And then we'll also get to see if George Iloka will possibly play. That's another starter. So if George plays, we'll see how long he plays. And then also we can see who is going to get the start at the other safety position. In my opinion, I would assume that it would probably be Clayton. I'd personally like to see Josh Shaw because he has that on-field experience. He's actually played in games. I'd love to see him out there, but we'll see. And then from a running back standpoint, Joe Mixon struggled a little bit. Jeremy Hill was another positive. He actually played well, but we're also going to see Gio. See, all of these guys that I'm naming weren't even in the game. So how can you give a fair, assessment of the last game if they didn't play? When you don't have a John Ross, you don't have a George Iloka, you don't have a Pac-Man Jones, a Drake Kirkpatrick. These are all guys that should be playing in the third game. So think about that. That would be like if we played the Chiefs and Marcus Peters was out, Travis Kelce was out. I don't know. I don't want to say, well, whatever. But basically, it would be like if we were playing them with all of those guys out. If Justin Houston was out, you're not going to have the same. It's not the same thing, okay? And I'm not saying that one person makes a difference, but you're talking about 5 to 6 guys that would normally play, 5 to 7 guys possibly that would normally play in that situation that weren't there. So you can't really go off of that. But this third game, I'm definitely looking forward to. It's against Washington, so we'll get to see how our defense actually plays together because we have yet to have all of our projected defensive starters play together. We've yet to see our full offense play together. What is John Ross going to do? How often is he going to play? I really don't recall seeing Brandon LaFell play much last game either. So with Marvin shuffling so many guys in and out of the lineup that second game, I'd like to see what they do this third game. And I think that it's more so going to tell us exactly and be a better indicator of what this team could be. AJ Green still looks good. He's doing AJ Green things as usual. I still think that this team is going to be very good. And I think that there's a lot of people on this team that are flying under the radar. I think once they get everything together, this team is going to be great. A lot of people are worried about the defense. Like I said, if you've ever played football before, you know that cohesiveness with the defense grows during the season. You really can't say how good a defense is really until like week 6. So, it's week 2 of a preseason game. I'm pretty sure they'll get things cleaned up. I'm very excited to see what the edge rush can do. And it's going to be interesting on how these things play out. So if I had to give my roster projection, and I posted this in a group on Facebook, I would think that starting off before the second game, I would probably have kept the third quarterback, but I'm not sure if we really can, given his second game performance. I mean, we really didn't get to see much of him, but I could see them keeping 2 to 3 quarterbacks. Obviously, at the running back position, they're going to have to. I think that Pierman has an inside track just given his experience and being a special teams captain, but that could go either way. But obviously you have your other 3 locks with Jeremy Hill, Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard. When you go to the wide receiver room, I think you're keeping 7. I think the 7 that I mean. And that's going to be Green, Ross, Boyd, LaFell, Erickson, Core, and Josh Malone. I think you keep those guys. Tight end is going to be interesting. Do they put Uzomah on the PUP list? I'm not sure. I would think so because it sounds like his injury is pretty bad, but I think you keep Eifert, Croft there. I think you also keep Hewitt. Hewitt is interesting. I think that they keep Hewitt. I think they put Uzomah on the PUP list. Moving over to the line, I think that they're going to keep possibly 9 people there. So you're definitely going to keep Obuehi. You're definitely going to keep Fisher. You're going to keep Bodine. You're going to keep Trey Hopkins, Darrin Smith. I think they'll also keep the backup guard. I think his name is I can't recall his name, but the backup guard. And then I also think that we'll keep obviously Kellen Bowling and probably 2 more reserve linemen. I think that Eric Winston may be on his way out, but I think that we keep Dillman because he's a draft pick and a couple other guys there. And then when you move to the defensive side of things, that's where it kind of gets interesting on what they're going to do at defensive end. I personally have not seen enough from Michael Johnson for him to make this team, but I think that as much as he played with the first unit last week and as much as they like him as a figure in that locker room and as a guy in the community, it's going to be hard for them to cut him. I haven't seen much from Marcus Hardison. I think Marcus Hardison and Michael Johnson really are kind of competing with each other, and I would say that Michael Johnson kind of has a slight edge because I haven't really seen Hardison really flash during the preseason. I think that he has possibly more potential, but if it came down to those two, I'm not sure. If I had to go on the defensive line, obviously you're keeping Geno. I think Pat Sims is a lock. I think Andrew Billings is a lock. Obviously Dunlap's a lock. Jordan Willis is a lock. I also think, Chris Smith, I think, is almost a lock at this point. And then I think that Will Clark might get cut, bro. I really think Will Clark might get cut. I would keep the Shawn Williams, and I'm probably missing someone else, but whoever that last position, because you never know, because I think they plan to rush Lawson from the edge as well. So I think one of those guys makes it. You look at the linebackers, I think that they keep 6. I think you have Burfict, Mentor, I can't really – I'm drawing a blank, but Burfict, Mentor. I think you're also keeping the rookie that they took out of Oklahoma this year. I also think, obviously, they're going to keep Nick Vigil, Vinny Ray, and I believe that's it. If I am missing somebody, Kevin Mentor. So I think they keep all of those guys, and then you move on to the cornerback position where things kind of get interesting because I think I would like to see them keep, obviously, Pac-Man, Dre, William Jackson III, Darquez Dennard. Those guys are pretty much locks. And then I'd like to see them keep a Kavari Russell and a Josh Shaw. I'd like to see those guys stay. And then when you look at the safety position with Shawn Williams freeing up a roster spot, he could possibly – I think he would go on the PUP list as well, so that kind of frees up a spot. But I think that Josh Shaw gives you a little bit of flexibility there. So Josh Shaw, Darrin Smith, George Iloka, obviously, and Clayton, I think, are your guys. Demetrius Cox could make it a pretty interesting battle there, but I think that those are your guys. And then, obviously, I think that you have to choose a kicker, and I think since they invested the draft pick in a Jake Elliott, I think that he would be their guy going forward. But, yeah, man, let me know what you guys think. I'm not trying to be Mr. Optimistic here. I'm trying to be a realist. And in real terms, the sky is not falling. It's only the second week. It's a preseason game. Half of the guys who probably would be playing in the regular season didn't play in the game. But, yeah, let me know you guys' thoughts. Make sure you subscribe, comment. I'd like to know what you guys' thoughts are on the game. I'm going to try, now that we're back and technically sound and we have a solid base, I'm going to try to make sure that we get this New Stripe City episode to you guys this Sunday at 11. But, yeah, like I said, a lot of changes going on personally, but I'm excited. Can't wait. I really want to keep definitely continuing to do this and bring this on to a more consistent basis. It's just like this is a crazy year. You know, bought a new house, kid, now a new job, moving. I mean, it's all over the place. But one thing that I do love is talking to you guys about the Bengals. So, yeah, like I said, shout out to Jeremiah again. This is dope, bro. This is so dope. Like, this made my day, man. I mean, I know I harped on it a lot, but, man, this really made my day. The dude made the New Stripe City with it. Come on, man. It's sick. Like, one day I'm definitely gonna have to do a video where I go through with you guys all of the signatures that are on here. There are a ton of signatures on here. I think even Jeremy Hills is in there somewhere. So definitely big shout out to Jeremiah for sure. But as always, I'm gonna leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on Sunday. Who day? Don't panic. We coming.